Good evening, project managers and other esteemed guests to the PMI Central Indiana Chapter June event. We welcome you, and we also are happy once again to be here to help you get from where you are to where you want to be in your professional career. Tonight's feature presentation, Fueling Extraordinary Growth Through Culture. Steve Salisbury is a sage, and he has some awfully sound advice for us. But first, let's get to the announcements. Are you a new chapter member? Have you been newly certified? Perhaps you have passed a really difficult exam and received some new certification recently. Well, we'd like to join with you in congratulating and celebrating. Please drop a note in the chat box about the good fortune that you've had. Certainly welcome to new members and folks that are here for the first time. You know, these types of programs are brought to you by people who volunteer, chapter members just like you, and consider volunteering. There's a big leadership workshop coming up June 26th. And if you're thinking of stepping up into the volunteer space here, we welcome you. And there's an email address, BOD, standing for Board of Directors, if you're interested. Reminder that after today's program, we'll have a bit of a segue, and then we have the meet and mingle. We're doing things a little differently this time than we have the last couple of months. We're going for some quick hit topics. We think that would be a little bit more engaging. We invite you to hang with us, meet some of the other audience members here, mingle with them, and exchange some ideas. And of course, we have, as usual, the survey to be completed. Take less than 60 seconds. You'll see that appear near the end of the meeting in one of the borders or call to action buttons. There you see. I also, at this point in time, would like to have one more announcement that's here, and it has to do with, we heard last month from the Social Good Committee, and there are some more details going on about this initial fundraiser that's being kicked off publicly for the first time, I believe, tonight. And to help make a difference, you're going to hear more about this after the presentation. So again, please stay with us after the presentation, learn a little bit more about this from our volunteer mini podcast. And now we bring you a word from the board. This week, we hear from Vice President of Professional Development, Galen Hill. Galen, what do you have for us this month?
Thank you very much, Rich. So I am here tonight to talk about our professional development date called ProDev Day 2021. This year it's going to be held on September 23rd and 24th. We're actually doing half day, so it'll be the afternoon of the 23rd and the morning of the 24th. That way you don't have to take an entire day off from work. We do hope that you can attend, and this will be a good schedule for you. We're actually hosting this ProDev Day along with the Central Illinois chapter and the Central Iowa chapter. So look for emails in a few weeks regarding more information about how to register, what the agenda is going to be like. And as always, we need volunteers and sponsors. So if you know of anyone who is looking to do some sponsoring, please let us know. If you are looking to volunteer, we would love to have you come help us. The website to or the link to go register is at the bottom right here. So please come join us for a day of great information.
Galen, thank you very much. Appreciate that. This looks really exciting. And when I was mentioning those volunteer opportunities, there are quite a few to help pull this together. So we could really use some help if you're interested in pitching in. I think there's like the discount to be able to the admission fee as well, a few other perks.
Yes, indeed. Look for those emails as well. We're going to be posting it on our social media as well as sending out emails. So look for those emails to help us with this day.
Thanks, Galen. Great hearing from you.
Thank you.
All righty. Now, we can't quite get to our guest speaker until we do one other bit of order, a line of business here. Yes, it's the infamous copyright and disclaimer slide. And you've read through this before, but permit me a chance to summarize. Bullet one, we believe honesty, responsibility, respect, fairness are values that drive ethical project management conduct. Bullets 2 and 3, the work presented here today is the IP of the presenter, not necessarily the views of PMI. Bullet 4, unauthorized use of this content may result in bad things happening to you. And now, Tonight's speaker, Steve Salisbury, has helped dozens of executives grow their businesses. His unique approach is all about understanding and adjusting organizational culture and then executing strategy quickly, effectively, with the highest return possible. What's his key? Steve evaluates interpersonal, organizational, and process elements to eliminate cross-functional dysfunction. And he builds teams to create a leadership culture that drives exponential growth. Steve has worked for some of the world's most recognizable organizations to drive growth, creating capacity, galvanizing leaders, and driving accountability. In 2020, Steve published his first book, Activate: 15 Steps to Profitable Strategy Execution. Let's see what we can all learn from Steve Salisbury tonight. Steve, it's all yours.
Okay, well, Rich, thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you here this evening. I think we have quite a bit of really good material here, and I hope you gain something from it. To get us started, I'd like to start with a little poll, just so I can understand a little bit more about you and kind of where you fit in the project management spectrum. So Rich, if you could bring up that first poll, looks like you have. And if folks could respond, that would be great.
%. We'll give it a little bit more here. I think people may have been surprised to have a poll and a chance to participate so early on in the presentation.
We like to make sure the blood is flowing.
Okay, gang.
It's been a long work.
Boy, keep your hands near your mice in this presentation. We have a few more of these coming up. See if anything with the initial results coming through. I see 26. Let's see, what is this? 36%. I manage projects across functions, and looks like number to tie for second, with managing projects within single org function and managing a PMO. 60%. I think I'm going to end the voting. All righty. But gang, stick around because we have more of these and sharing the results with everybody. All righty. See him okay, Steve?
Yeah, this is good. Thanks, Rich. So I appreciate this perspective, and knowing that a large number of you are dealing with projects or programs across functions, I think you'll be able to relate to some of what we have to discuss this evening. So this is helpful for me. So let's get started. My new dishwasher was damaged upon delivery. Now I have to make that dreaded phone call to customer service, dialing the number, press 1, press 4, press 3, press 7. Finally, a live person. Yes, I'll hold. And I waited and waited. Then I have an agent all to myself. I told her about my problem. It took 10 minutes for this person to understand the situation and finally tell me that they were unable to help me. She would have to transfer me to another department. I thought, here we go again. And I waited again. This time I was on hold for 30 minutes, strumming my fingers on the desk and searching on the internet to try to find a company that would sell me a dishwasher, preferably one that wasn't damaged. Finally, the second agent answered, and it took another 10 minutes to explain to this person that I wasn't necessarily interested in waiting 8 weeks for them to ship another unit. I needed something quick. And after another 20 minutes, we figured out that this company was not going to be able to help me. And I hung up the phone in exasperation. Oh, one thing, he was able to process the return and credit my account, but that's about all. This story probably resonates with most of you. It's frustrating, it wastes time, and it's counterproductive. And it's the direct result of a term that I coined some 30 years ago called cross-functional dysfunction. I've come to a point where I schedule an hour on my calendar when I have to make these kinds of phone calls. I know they're going to take forever. I know I'm going to be passed around. I know I'm going to face cross-functional dysfunction. You see, if these agents were professionally trained in customer service, and more importantly, if the company had the correct processes to deal with a variety of issues, handing off customers across multiple agents wouldn't be necessary. A single agent could drive to a solution much more quickly, but because companies are historically functionally designed, it makes it very difficult for call centers to organize the information in a way that makes sense for a single point of contact. Cross-functional dysfunction. When you hear the term, you may be smiling to yourself and maybe even laughing out loud. I've had that happen. We've all experienced it. It happens when you try to work with people in other functions, but they don't cooperate. It happens when you hear conflicting messages from upper management. And it happens when your goals are different than the goals of your peers. These all create barriers to working together. And it happens when you can't work as a team. What causes cross-functional dysfunction? Well, we're going to dig into it today. Sometimes we call it silos. Sometimes we say the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. It's when engineering doesn't know the promises sales folks have made to customers, or manufacturing doesn't understand the changes in production required to meet new customer demands, or when accounts receivable doesn't know what a customer service has made in terms of allowances to their customers and their invoices. These are all examples of cross-functional dysfunction. It creates an ineffective culture where employees don't work well together. What's the cost? The cost to the second largest failed merger of all time, Daimler-Benz and Chrysler. This merger failed primarily due to culture. Daimler had a highly disciplined approach to management and decision-making, whereas Chrysler was much more freewheeling. They couldn't figure out how to work together. The cost? $36 billion with a B dollars. Who says culture doesn't matter? But it does matter, and successful leaders have figured out how to unleash their organizations to improve creativity, innovation, and customer service. This leads to growth in the marketplace. They know what it takes to prepare their organizations to compete. They understand what it takes to win. Cross-functional dysfunction is more than likely holding back your organization. Using my active method of leadership will create more growth faster. Who doesn't want more growth faster? So the active leadership model incorporates 6 elements that my clients tell me and show me that they need to be successful. Today, we'll talk about how organizational culture has evolved over time to describe why the active model is crucial for a leader's success. In summary, the active leadership model helps leaders create successful organizations by focusing on aim or purpose, becoming more collaborative, teaching or coaching instead of telling, having greater influence, becoming more vulnerable, and finally, enrolling employees to help drive the much needed modification to culture. Active: aim, collaboration, teaching, influence, vulnerability, and enrolling. Today I'll share stories, both good and bad, and walk you through how we arrived at this place where cross-functional dysfunction is so prevalent, and the actions we need to undertake to build a better culture and eliminate this thing we call cross-functional dysfunction. Also, I think it's important to point out that as we emerge from our various situations of shelter in place and we return to our offices, regardless of what that might look like, everything we're going to talk about today becomes even more relevant. The skills required to advance a growth culture are the same skills required to help employees through all of the changes that we have gone through and that we will go through as a result of COVID-19. So this means that all of us have had to learn to become more human. And what have we gained? And I think for some leaders who looked at this as an opportunity to grow their capabilities, they saw significant improvement. And in many cases, without knowing it, they used elements of this model to improve their leadership, to create more growth faster in spite of the pandemic. Bottom line, what's driving this is that in the world economy that we're in today, organizations really need to learn how to move faster, to innovate faster, to provide more employee development opportunities, to drive for greater integrity and collaborate faster. Yet most organizations and leaders are really unprepared, ill-prepared to be successful with this. And in fact, we've seen many fail because they haven't been able to figure out how to handle all this change. It's really about staying relevant in a world where there's greater speed and more innovation faster. The project almost failed. This was one of the first projects that I had led way back in the 1980s. We had just implemented the company's first email system. Yes, it was that long ago. And nobody would use this system. We sat around the table, scratching our heads, trying to figure out what we could do to engage employees to use the new system. Then we had an idea. I was to speak with Mindy, the CEO's assistant. I called her and asked her if she was available. I walked up to her office and we had a great conversation about what it was we were trying to do and the benefits to the company. She was on board almost immediately. She saw how it could help make her life so much easier. And because of her role, I knew that she had significant influence in the organization, right? Whenever you want something done, you go to the top and you find out who that person's assistant is, and you ask them. So I suggested that Mindy ask all of her peers to use only the new calendaring system for scheduling meetings among the executive team. She and I agreed that if the leadership team used the system, it wouldn't take long and others would follow suit. At first, there was resistance among the executive assistants to many issues. Issues like everyone had to agree on which meetings would be scheduled using the system. What about meetings that included people deeper in the organization? How would they know? Conference rooms weren't on the schedule yet, and so they still had to call each other to make sure rooms were available. So Mindy and I started meeting with them regularly to help them to adjust. We added conference rooms to the system. We hired somebody to help answer questions and solve problems. We established guidelines to use, to determine when to use the calendar and when not. Within a few weeks, everybody was on board. And within a few months, we had 2,000 people using the system. Now, this is a very simple example. Yet, we changed the culture and drove exponential results. Over time, this project provided nearly $100 million in value to the company. We gave these executive assistants a way to work together more effectively. We gave them development opportunities along the way, and we provided a forum for them to collaborate. They rose to the occasion, and they really helped drive the results. So I think as leaders, we need to think about these implications as opportunities, right? We can provide our teams with the chance to make big contributions in simple ways. In this way, in this example, Mindy influenced her peers. Together, we created opportunities for them to collaborate, to engage, and to help implement the system. And these are just a couple of the elements of the active leadership model: influence and engagement. So the first step in the journey to exponential growth is understanding that what brought us here today isn't necessarily going to sell the service well as we move into the future. In my experience, organizations that suffer from cross-functional dysfunction, and that's most of them, struggle the most. We need to understand it, understand its origins to help us begin to change the culture. Historically, organizations are hierarchical. And I believe that while you still need some level of structure for the right level of control and measures, it's critical for leaders to develop greater collaboration across their organization. And this is one of the underlying principles of driving a new culture. And the benefits are real and they're quantifiable. And we'll show you an example of that later. I could not believe what I was hearing. As I led this workshop for one of my clients, the leadership team openly admitted that they preferred to work alone and independently. They didn't like to ask for help. And in some cases, they said openly that they didn't trust the others to deliver on commitments. I thought, wow, this is a surefire recipe for cross-functional dysfunction. If they don't ask each other for help, one leader makes commitments that another leader can't support. If they don't trust each other, then they start looking for fault instead of building on each other's good work. This further divides the team and doesn't build it. As a team leader, this team's leader had previously asked me for help. And now it was clear to me why. At the end of our time together, though, they began to see the benefits of a more cooperative workplace. We broke down some significant interpersonal barriers and achieved commitment to try a different approach to teamwork. They committed to involving one another earlier in their planning. They committed to proactively bringing improvement ideas to each other. And so far, it's working well. This was just like 3 months ago. They're starting to have conversations they never had before, and they're starting to trust one another more. One example is that the person responsible for events told operations about an upcoming event much sooner, giving that person more time to plan and prepare instead of reacting and rushing around at the last minute. Again, a simple example, but those are the things that really make a difference to us. This team increased their collaboration. They're coaching one another more by asking questions and not telling each other. They're becoming more vulnerable. They're building a better foundation for trust. Now, all of these things work to eliminate the problems of cross-functional dysfunction. These are also 4 elements of the active leadership model. When you adopt these elements, you too can have a greater impact on your organization and improve its performance. All right, so I probably have said the phrase cross-functional dysfunction, 40 times? We're going to bring up another poll. So Rich, if you can help out, I'd like you all to answer this question. What do you think best defines cross-functional dysfunction?
All righty, folks, time for voting. What to you is cross-functional dysfunction? Hmm. 37% voting, 45. We're looking to set the record that we set earlier. We're looking for more than 60% participation here. 53, we're getting so close. 58, golly, and all of the above is winning, Steve. 56%. Do you see it there? And then the second place, requirements between functions not known or considered, at about 9%.
Yep. Well, not surprising. Actually, I think I actually said 1 or 2 of these. So, yeah, if there is a correct answer, it would be the last one, all of the above. All 3 of these are features of cross-functional dysfunction. Let's move to the next question, Rich, if you could.
Sure. You want to introduce this one?
Sure. So here, what I'd like you to estimate, folks, is what % of teams, what % of organizations do you believe suffer from cross-functional dysfunction?
Good question. The audience here that's participating, I have a sense a number of them have had some personal experiences in this space.
I think we all have.
60% reporting in so far. We reached like almost 70% participation in the last survey.
Yep.
Just about there. Okay, so how about we lock it in there?
Yep, that's good. All right, well, we're going to flip to the next slide, and I would tell you that, I guess that's up to me, right? There we go. All right, so here it is. 75% is the answer in this article that was published in the Harvard Business Review. A bunch of folks said 95%, you know, not surprising. So I'm curious, this is a rhetorical question, no answer required, but how many people smiled to themselves when I first used that phrase earlier, cross-functional function? I remember I was in one meeting, actually in Indianapolis, about a year ago where I talked about this, and people were actually laughing out loud when they heard the phrase. So let's dive into it a little bit more. This study published by the Harvard Business Review a couple of years ago talks about, you know, the impacts over here on the left side of the screen. The bottom line is that organizations struggle to stay on plan, and results come much slower if they come at all. So another case study, if you will. The project failed and it was canceled. This large company had 3 major product divisions that often shared the same customers. Yet each of the divisions approached these customers differently, which caused confusion among those customers. And management wanted to improve their experience. So they charted a project to improve, to do just that, to improve the customer experience. And one of the goals was for all 3 of the divisions to change their interaction with the customer base so that it was more consistent across the company. The project manager, we'll call him Albert, he was selected from the largest of the 3 divisions and set about to make the change. He ran into many obstacles, trying to engage the 3 divisions to work together. First, they couldn't agree on a team composition. Then they couldn't agree on an approach. Then they couldn't agree on how to communicate with the rest of the organization. This went on for 3 years. In the end, they weren't able to resolve the conflicts between these 3 divisions. I think you can see why the project failed. In Albert's case, he attempted to resolve these issues with better project management. He improved risk and issue reporting. He put more focus on metrics. He added more tools. But in the end, it didn't work. Sorely needed elements of the active leadership model were missing. There was very little dialogue and no collaboration. There was no influence demonstrated across the organization. Project review meetings were primarily one way. Albert did all the talking. Stakeholders came to those project review meetings, and if they did ask any questions, they were only about their specific functions. There was no dialogue across the team to understand how changes in one area would impact other areas. There were a few questions about the implications of project risks, and participants were defensive about project issues. And this went on and on. I think Albert would have been better served had he had stronger leadership to drive accountability across the 3 divisions and focus on aligning the players. But he wasn't at the right level, and no single sponsor stepped up to own the project. When I pursued better sponsorship, I was told the CEO would have to be the sponsor because of the way the organization was structured. But the project was too small and he couldn't be bothered. So this is a classic example of cross-functional dysfunction that ultimately cost this company millions of dollars because they couldn't make this project work. So when leaders use that active leadership model, they go a long way to eliminate that kind of waste. And I also believe that the more we work from home, that this cross-functional dysfunction is exacerbated, and it's more difficult to align, when you're working apart from one another, hence the need for more leadership. So how did we get here? How did we come to this place where this thing called cross-functional dysfunction is so prevalent? Well, it goes back nearly 2 centuries. During the mid-19th century, producers focused on craftsmanship. Let's use the wagon wheel as an example. One man built one wagon wheel. If you needed to produce more wagon wheels, you hired more men who each built one wagon wheel. The process was slow and it produced highly variable results. No 2 wagon wheels were the same. By 1890, management scientist Frederick Taylor came along with the idea that greater specialization of task would improve efficiency and reduce variability. So now you had men focused on different aspects of building wagon wheels. One man built the spokes and the wooden part of the wheel. Another man fashioned the metal components. Then one more assembled everything. This sped the process and offered more consistency. Then by the early 20th century, Henry Ford capitalized on this and created the assembly line, and others followed suit. And then this specialization eventually found its way in the back office, where, for example, payroll would compute paychecks, but AP, accounts payable, would write the checks. Ultimately, though, this started to become a blocker. And toward the end of the century, more and more organizations grappled with becoming more innovative. Clayton Christensen and folks like him appeared on the scene and started talking about what organizations need to do to become more innovative and how to do it. And it was soon recognized that faster innovation was required to succeed. Just give me 1 second here. Rich, if we could go to the next poll. Let's see.
Coming up now. There we go.
So this is one. Yep.
Do I have the right one up?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
So this is one that y'all should be able to relate to. According to PMI, what % of projects fail?
Maybe on the exam. We may have a lot of aces on this one. 43%. What % of projects fail? You know, I took a look at this initially when we were prepping for this, and frankly, I was thinking it wasn't here.
Oh, really?
% it wasn't here. All right, we got 62% playing, 63%. Yeah, I think things have gotten better. They must have. I think from when let's go ahead and end the voting, and there are your results, Steve.
Yep.
And there's the results, everybody.
Good answers. So project failure rates continue to run about 20 to 30%. So this is a really smart group. You guys are great. We'll go back to the slides.
There you go.
All right. I just need to figure out how to run things. Okay. So how do we know we have a problem? Well, there is one answer. Project failure rates continue to run about 20 to 30%. And this number hasn't changed much for 20 years. This costs companies globally about $2 trillion annually. That's a lot of money. In the 1990s, there was a big push for empowerment. And you still hear this term bandied about. Rewards are misaligned. I've actually seen it happen where really great functional teams were rewarded more than cross-functional teams that actually delivered more value to the organization. And of course, we've all seen plenty of ERP failures, right? And most of these are because, most of these failures are because these organizations have never really addressed their cross-functional issues. Fire in the belly. Who wants indigestion? I sat in this all-employee meeting and I wondered what the CEO was talking about. Turns out he was adamant about employees becoming more empowered with a fire in their belly. We had some idea of what empowerment meant, but there was no agreement among senior leaders on what it was or how to do it. We had some sense that he wanted us to work together more effectively, but there was a lack of vulnerability and trust. The kind of trust that two people have to engage in a healthy dialogue with one another. And then finally, middle management must have been out that day because we certainly didn't receive any support from them on what to do or how to do it. As a low-level manager at the time, I attempted to execute fire in the belly by asking neighboring functions to present their work to my staff so that we could understand how to work together more effectively. I was rebuffed. An executive I worked with couldn't understand why another project team was giving each other high fives when he felt that their project failed to deliver on the promised value. No amount of fire in the belly was going to overcome these examples of cross-functional dysfunction. This held the company back over time, but yet in the long run, they figured out how to overcome this. And they did it by using elements of the active leadership model. They created more growth faster. They learned how to collaborate more as they became more vulnerable and trusted each other more. A few years later, this same company beat the odds and performed the largest and most successful merger in their industry because leaders figured out how to collaborate. As leaders, we face these issues every day. But what do we do when something isn't working right? And I think this is where our strength as an influencer comes to play. Our ability to influence is related to our ability to be human, to be real, to be vulnerable. There's no better way to build organizational trust, commitment, and accountability than by being vulnerable. This generally means, for example, apologizing when we make a mistake, or another example, admitting when we don't have the answer. These are elements of the active leadership model. So we talked a great deal about the pitfalls of cross-functional dysfunction and how it hurts us. Let's talk about root causes and how we can change the trajectory. At its core, this symptom or this problem of cross-functional dysfunction is caused by misaligned goals at the top of the organization. This, excuse me, this drives confusion in role, which in turn prevents people from moving ahead. Further, leaders resist giving up power. All this drives people to fear working across the organization. And then finally, attempts to drive this from the top are slow and ineffective because we never really taught people how to work well together across the organization and be more effective. Ultimately, they had some success, but it took years longer than expected with far less capability than planned. I was asked to help a management team re-energize a portfolio of projects and implement a more structured PMO. I saw early on that there was not enough alignment at the senior levels of the company to drive this portfolio successfully. We attempted to fix this by building alignment discussions into the project plan, but they were poorly attended. This in turn drove more confusion for the project team. We asked for a seasoned leader to lead the PMO. They responded with a person who was ill-equipped for the role. She had the passion, but she didn't have the skills. In the end, there was a great deal of top-down pressure to perform, but there was no single sponsor holding the team accountable and driving success. In this example, we needed to have a realistic handle on our major risks. This project had 5 of the 6 causes listed on this slide. People were fleeing the organization because of this gaping lack of leadership. The purpose wasn't clear. The leadership team wasn't aligned. Employees weren't engaged. Cross-functional dysfunction held it back. It's important today to really have a good handle on your organizational risks with everyone spread apart working from home. 4 of the 6 symptoms, I believe, are likely to be greater risks during the season of COVID and in the aftermath, where most of us will be working from home, or many of us will. All right, but you know what? It doesn't have to be this way. With strong leadership and with a willingness to work together and try something different, we can overcome this dysfunction. It really boils down to having purpose with aligned outcomes, being willing to truly empower your team, giving up control, and expecting greater openness. This is the essence of the active leadership model. And I'm going to share a case study to demonstrate how this works. We're going to talk about AbbVie. This is a $25 billion pharmaceutical company. Many of you may have heard of it. They're the maker of Humira, and I'm sure you've seen the television commercials for that. Every engagement counts. Every engagement counts. We did it. After several weeks of working together, the leadership team landed on a purpose to which they could all align and support. As we worked together, they increased their effectiveness as a team because they spent less time talking at each other and more time collaborating to understand each other's point of view. They increased their speed by listening to each other and acting more quickly as a team. They created more innovative ways to work with their customers by enlisting employees to help design solutions. They exceeded their goals. Let's back up to the beginning. Michael had just completed restructuring a large team of about 400 people. Employee satisfaction was alarmingly low, and unfavorable attrition was dangerously high. Our mission was to turn this around. We did everything listed on this page. Working with the leadership team, we created a purpose statement with clear outcomes, was inspirational, and was measurable. We facilitated leadership team meetings where they learned to be more collaborative and less adversarial. Michael became more of a coach. Early on, he spent more time moderating unhealthy conflict, but as the team improved, he became more of a coach. I watched him become a different leader. The leaders became more influential with one another, spending less time advocating for their positions and more time listening to each other's ideas and concerns. Much of this resulted from them learning to become more vulnerable and learning how to trust one another, which in turn created more healthy debate. And finally, they also instituted several mechanisms, including a change action network, to enroll employees in all of the change required to improve the outcomes of the organization. Employees helped design customer solutions. They helped management see where teams could work together more effectively. They provided candid feedback to Michael on how things needed to improve further, which he then in turn used to coach his leaders. So again, it's not really that difficult. It's common sense combined with the confidence to try something different. It's painting a picture so people can understand where we're trying to go. It's facilitating growth, not demanding it. It's modeling behavior where we trust and engage in healthy conflict. Successful leaders and project managers do this every day. So let's connect the dots. When you adopt the active leadership model, you reduce the negative impact of cross-functional dysfunction. You change the culture, your team will be more productive, they'll be prone to try new ideas, they'll embrace development opportunities, and all of this leads to the bottom line and improves the customer experience. AbbVie did it. In 1 year, engagement scores moved from 35% to 70%. That's significant. In 2 years, unfavorable attrition plummeted from 16% to 7% to 2%. And as a result of all of this success, Michael and his team won a 25% increase in budget and headcount from the executive leadership team so they could ultimately do more to support AbbVie's customers, physicians, and patients like you and me. But it wasn't just AbbVie that did this. Using the active approach to leadership, another organization tripled its size while eliminating growing pains and resolving the sudden work from home crisis that was thrust upon them a year ago. And then another firm continued its cultural transformation to become even more culturally, disruptively innovative and deliver new applications in spite of the pandemic. Home stretch. So there you have it. It's real, it's quantifiable. We demonstrated that it's measurable. Now it's up to you. As leaders, we chart the path. We can make it happen. We can improve cross-functional collaboration and the cross-functional health of our organization. We have the power to influence that as project managers and project management officers. So as we wrap this up, here is the summary of things that we can do to help build an organization that drives growth and delivers greater value sooner. Are you this kind of leader? Are you ready to prepare yourself and your leadership team to become active leaders? Are you ready to engage the organization in this journey? Are you ready to exponentially improve the results of your organization? With that, we'll pause for a few minutes and take some questions.
Steve, sounds great. We have some questions that are beginning to roll in. Just a reminder to everybody, if you have a question, please list it in the chat. If you end with a question mark, that will help escalate it into a question, where I can do something like publish it on the screen. I said I would publish it on the screen. It didn't publish for the second month in a row. Hey, active leadership versus reflective leadership, Steve. If you're in the middle of a project, can you shift gears? Ken Rowe with the question. There it is. I did get it up there.
That's Ken, that's a great question, and it gives me pause to think. You know what? I don't think there's a versus here, right? I think active leaders are reflective leaders. I think active leaders take time to think about their leadership, to think about what it is they need to do to improve their ability across all 6 of those elements of the model, right? How can they be clear about their purpose? How can they collaborate more effectively? And on and on. So I think they work together.
All righty, thank you. Next one up here. This is Audrey. You mentioned the impact on COVID a little bit earlier. The question here is, are we truly working apart, or are we working closer together? One could perhaps make the case that we're able to now reach each other faster than being lost in the physical hallways.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Audrey. And I think it depends a little bit on the organization. The companies that I've worked with for the last year, they've grappled with this, and I would say that in some cases you're right. It might be easier to reach one another faster, but I'm also aware. In fact, I was on a project team last fall where I found it actually more difficult to reach out to people that I really needed to talk with. So I think it goes back to the example. I think it goes back to the example that leaders set, right? And how they establish the culture. Do we really want people to work together more effectively? I think that's the ultimate question.
All righty. Hey, William has a question. We're going to have to go back to the presentation maybe to remind me of this one. The last bullet point of communicate 10 by 10. Where was that?
That was on the last slide.
It was on this one here. Okay. There we are. Yes. A little bit more elaboration on that last bottom bullet point, Steve.
Above all, reiterate purpose, ensure clarity, communicate 10 by 10. What I mean by that is, don't think that you can tell people once and they get the message, right? There's that old saying, you got to tell people 7 times, 10 times, whatever the number is. It's more than once. And
if it's it's a bigger number. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a bigger number. So a couple of quick examples. I remember working with an executive, a C-level executive, and he said in a meeting once, well, I told them once, why didn't they get it? I'm like, I couldn't believe he said that. And I worked with another executive who, when I first started working with him, he did a town hall meeting. He spoke nonstop for 59 minutes. I watched the clock. And at 1 minute to the hour, he said, any questions? How many questions do you think you got? 0. So
no, I have a different urgency at that point.
Right. So, I mean, that might not sound like it goes directly to 10 by 10, but it does, because he didn't give people a chance to engage, to interact. So communicating isn't just about telling people, it's also about engaging to listen, right? And find out where people are at and then modifying your message maybe accordingly.
Yeah. Excellent point there.
I could say more about this.
There's a double shot question in this one. Let's stick with the first one first of all. How did you put together the active framework?
Well, that's kind of interesting. This was just before the pandemic. I was working on my book, actually, and I was noodling around with everything that I had felt I had learned from working with all of these executives. And, I was searching for an acronym, and it fell in my lap. I couldn't believe it. Purpose, aim, right? So you have to be a little creative with the words, right?
I said, right, noted that.
Right, being more collaborative, coaching, teaching, influence, vulnerability, and engagement. I mean, it kind of fell in my lap.
Wow.
Struggles and pain points you saw at organizations that maybe inspired you. Well, I think I gave a couple examples. I think, so I want to maybe, I also want to be cognizant of the time. I referenced one organization, it's a client of mine, that continues to inspire me. I've been working with this organization for about 4 years. It's a small company. When I started working with them, there were 40 employees. Now there's 120. And I have a very good relationship with the CEO. And when I first started working with him, he shared with me the kinds of angst that he dealt with when he first became the CEO. Nobody liked him. He was in there to make change, and nobody wanted change. Actually, there was a group of employees that tried to get him fired. It was a mess. And so this was 4 years ago. And now they love him. He's grown that organization from 40 to 120. And because I'm not going to take all the credit for this. He is a great, great leader. But he's taken my counsel, and he has very, very little cross-functional dysfunction in his organization. He's actually been able to get teams to work together more effectively. It works really well.
Last one. And there's a second one which follows. 3 implementation steps to improve inclusive culture The other question that was back behind this is asking, what can we do to create a more collaborative culture? I think inclusive and collaborative are different in the context here.
Yeah,
what do you suggest?
Yeah, so I view one as a little more structural. This one is a little more structural. The other one's a little more behavioral. But let me get to it. So 3 improvement steps to improve an inclusive culture. Well, I think number 1, and I mentioned it talking about AbbVie, having some sort of a change action network, or whatever your organization might need, right? To structure lower level employees in some sort of a cross-functional team to make work happen, to get work done, right? To help define what processes might have to change, as an example. So that's a cross-functional team. You can do the same thing functionally, where you have people within functions designing what their ultimate work state might look like instead of somebody else handing it to them, right? So I think those are 2 steps, maybe not 3. And then on the collaborative side, I think I don't ever like simple solutions, but in the interest of time, right? I think this one can be simple, and it's called talk less, listen more. Ask more probing questions. The other thing I didn't like about this executive that spoke for 59 minutes, he just said, any questions? He didn't ask, how did that impact you? Or what do you think that means to you and your organization, right? Ask questions that really get people to think and interact, not just transaction, right?
Awesome. Steve, thank you. I think you might have some additional resources to go over for us that you're leaving behind. So let me turn you back over to your presentation for a couple of other things, and then I'll be right back.
Okay, sure. So I think we did that. Let's see. Here we go. So, to wrap this up, let's stay in touch. I do it's actually now about a twice monthly newsletter, which you can sign up on my website. So I would love it if you did that. We can stay in touch on LinkedIn, Facebook. I find that business people use Facebook less than LinkedIn, but whatever works for you. And then Rich mentioned it at the beginning. My ebook is out on Amazon. It's a Kindle, and it's like $3. It's cheap. So if you are so inclined, I encourage you to go out and take a look at it. The last thing I would share, and we're making this presentation available, right, Rich?
We are.
Oh, I lost him.
You got me now?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're making the presentation available to folks afterwards. Yep.
From a friend to confirm that that's the case, Vince.
Yeah. Well, okay. Right. So the last couple of slides are just some background material from the Harvard Business Review and some books that I have leaned on for help that I think that can be really helpful, and they can really help you become more of an active leader. So please feel free to use any or all of those. And again, thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate being with you here today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Everyone give it up for Steve Salisbury. Steve, this is where you imagine thunderous applause from an overpacked room of enthusiastic project managers for that. And then somebody like me comes by and says, we really appreciate what you've done. And so we understand, we looked into your background, Steve. I think you may even live on a vineyard. You have some connections to a vineyard, like your family owns one or something?
How much time you got?
Looky here. I have for you. This is a homemade, personally crafted sherry wine fermented in my laundry room, and that's for you. So I'll email it to you. Well, actually, I can't email this, despite your initial project. Where do you live, Steve? What state?
We live in Southwest Michigan.
Michigan. Oh,
We're
I can't.
right.
Well, I'm in India. I can't send us over state lines. I need a different plan. Wait, Steve, wait right there. I got something for you then. Plan B. We have to go to plan B. It's going to take a mouse click or two. Steve, please accept this, which we can email to you. The certificate of appreciation officially to you. We will send this an email. You'll absolutely receive this. Someday we'll get back together again in person. I'll save you a bottle of this vintage. Okay. But in the meantime, here's a certificate of appreciation that we'll send to you. Really appreciate you sharing your insights, your wisdom, your experience, the stories. Really a great job. And I understand that you're willing to kind of hang with us a little bit longer. We may meet up with you in the meet and mingle.
Yep,
Excellent. Everyone, Steve
Thanks,
Salisbury. You're welcome. All righty, gang. It's now time to bring a new segment back to life here. And if I get it right, we have an introductory segment to this. Guys, pay attention to that. Well, you may have to go for a bit of a rest break. If you need to do that, but turn up the volume, okay? And here we are. We have a new opening. Let's check this out. It's the return of a brand new segment, the Volunteer Mini Podcast. And you know it's official because I have an official podcast microphone right here to be able to do this. Today, we bring forward and we welcome volunteer Kim Sarver. Kim, are you excited about being part of the Volunteer Mini Podcast today?
Yes, I am, Rich. Thank you.
Excellent. Good to see you. Kim, how long have you been with PMI?
I've been with PMI for about 4 years now. So I'm glad to be, part of this great organization.
That's good. When you're doing work for a living type of stuff, who do you work for?
I work for IUPUI under the Polis Center.
Yeah. Now, I understand your volunteerism involves the Social Good Committee. We heard something about that. We heard about that last month a bit. What's new regarding stuff going on from the Social Good Committee, Kim?
Well, yeah, we are really ready to launch or kick off our fundraiser initiative for the Willersville Boys and Girls Club. And this would just help to extend their summer program and provide swim lessons for the youth in the community. So we're really excited about that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a skill that was very difficult for me, swimming. It took me a long time before I learned how to swim, but thank goodness somebody had the patience to do that. What a great cause. Hey, how can chapter members that are still online here, how can chapter members help this out?
Yeah, we're asking, our members to help support us in this social good initiative and help us to reach our goal. They can click, I believe that they can donate, to the fundraiser by clicking the banner or going to our link that we provide. And also sharing this, to their friends on social media. We just want to, get the word out that we're, doing some social good and trying to help the youth in the community.
Kim, tell me about this goal here. How'd you come up with a number like 4750 as the goal for all of us here?
Well, that's like 1 month of swim. They gave us they want to extend it for the year. So this goal is for 1 month. So we're aiming for that. If we get above that, that'd be great. I know they're excited and I'm glad that we're helping them with this initiative. So yeah.
Great. Anything to add?
I don't know. I just think that if anyone is interested, to help support us or wants to work on the social good, please reach out to our director, which is Rushika Shander. She is our social good director, and we're just excited about this. And please help support any gifts that you can donate would be good for them. So thank you.
Kim, thank you. Thanks for the Social Good Committee. The banner up there will take you to a place. The banner up there will take you to a place where you can see what's a little bit more about the initiative and a little bit where you can click. Last goofy question, Kim: beer or wine?
Wine.
Wine. I'll save this vintage for you. If you're in the state, I can send this to you, perhaps. So okay, we'll watch for that later. Kim Sarver, thanks for joining us on the Volunteer Mini Podcast today.
Thank you.
All righty. And with that, we now